Welcome back to Fitness by Design. This is the podcast where we engineer optimal health, energy, and confidence for corporate guys just like you without having to sacrifice any of your career success or your family time. I'm your host, Coach Spencer, and today we have a special guest, and that is my client, Ari Herman. Before we dive in, Ari has been with me for just about 2 years now and has had an incredible journey and has the physique to show it. He was able to drop 15 pounds in just our first 10 weeks together. And since then, he's packed on tons of muscle and just keeps grinding every single day. So with that, we're going to get right into it. Ari, welcome to the show, man. Welcome to Fitness by Design. You've been on here before, but for those of you who don't know, in the past, kind of give everybody a little bit of download. Like, who are you? What's kind of your, Reader's Digest life journey?
Hey, well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's always great to chat. I'm a father of four. I work a corporate job. I'm the CFO at a private equity firm, and I'm also a volunteer firefighter in my free time. As you said, we've been together for just about 2 years now, and I can't tell you how transformative the journey has been for me. Just from not knowing a dumbbell from a kettlebell to having never tracked or even thought about nutrition to now being able to eyeball a piece of chicken and being like, oh, that's 125 grams, or being like, hey, today's pull day, and just know what's going to happen. So, like a complete 180, and really all thanks to you.
Absolutely, man. And I remember like going back to our initial conversations, before you joined the program of like kind of where you were. So, just for, you kind of said it as like, I didn't know the equivalent of like, I didn't know my ass from my head type of thing. Realistically, like where were you in terms of, your life and your fitness before we started working together?
Yeah. So, my whole life, I've been on the skinnier side. I played sports all through high school. So, I had an idea as to what was needed and things like that. But I would always had someone telling me what to do, so never really did anything on my own. And I never focused on nutrition. Not that like I would eat like a trash monkey, but I would never have to think, can I have another slice of pizza? Is this cookie going to mess me up? I've never even owned a scale until you and I started working together, right? Like, and again, that's more of a privilege that I guess I've had, good metabolism, good genes, whatever you want to call it. But I've never really focused on exercise. I love to play a lot of sports, and that really, through most of my life, kind of kept me in shape, if you will. We fast forward till about 35 or late 30s, maybe even closer to 40. And I started to notice that like I was still on the thinner side, but a little bit of a gut starting, and it just felt like clothes were getting a little bit tighter, and it wasn't to a point where I was overweight. It wasn't a point that I was fat or whatever you want to call it, but it got to the point where I didn't love taking my shirt off. Again, nothing to be embarrassed about, but I was just I don't know, like a fat skinny kid, I guess, if you want to call it. I don't know a better word. And I was seeing a therapist at the time because I focus on mental health. I think that that's extremely important. And I realized like I was focusing on my mental health, I was focusing on work, but I wasn't focusing on my physical health. At the time, I had a I've got four kids, as I said, but the most recent one at that time was a 2 year old. And I was like, well, am I going to be able to run around and jump around with this 2 year old, until he's done running around with me? We since had, my wife and I since had another kid since then. So even more so, like, I got a kid on the way. Am I going to be able to be that same dad who's, giving piggyback rides and going to practices and, playing on the floor, running around? And I wasn't spending any time on my physical health, something that I honestly took for granted for, again, like I said, the first 35 plus years of my life. So I started to reach out and just see, I didn't know where to start. One advantage I have that I think most guys probably don't is, being a firefighter in my town, we have a gym in our firehouse. So plus Ari has a gym, minus Ari has no idea what to do in the gym, right? So I started reaching out, and I guess even taking one more step back is my entire life, at least through, starting in high school. So, my entire adult life for sure, and most of my adolescence, I was intermittent fasting. I was basically jam packing my classes all day, not really having anything in the morning, going to class, surviving on maybe water or coffee, and then by the time I get home, having huge dinners. And that was a lifestyle that worked for me and my weight, my body, my metabolism. When I started talking to people online, my big checklist, if you will, of like, here's what I'm looking for was I need someone to help me focus on nutrition, like what to eat. I wasn't thinking about protein. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was just eating whatever I could get my hands on, which worked, but, needed to change. I needed someone to guide me in the gym, give me ideas as to what to do, what exercises, what days, when, how to combine reps and things like that to help grow. And then lastly, I wanted to keep my intermittent fasting. Again, when I started, it probably wasn't called that, but at this point in kind of society, intermittent fasting became one of the new diet craze phase, whatever you want to call it. And I wanted to keep that. That was something that worked for me. I wasn't eating during the day. I wasn't hungry during the day. I was really, my body was telling me, hey, you're hungry. Now's a good time to eat. And that typically only happened at night. I talked to 2 or 3 coaches that I, again, randomly found online, and none of them, everyone heard me say, I want to continue intermittent fasting. But then when they put together a plan, they're like, okay, here you go, Ari. We're going to have you start off by eating 5 small meals a day. And I was like, wait a minute. Hey, guys, wait a minute. That's not what we chatted about, right? So they were basically trying to get me to fit into their cookie cutter plan, which I like in my head. I was like, okay, I guess I'll change if I have to, but there's got to be someone out there that like can help me, can listen and kind of fit me into their plan as opposed to fitting like my lifestyle. Anyway, you and I chatted, and we kind of went through the like right off the bat, we went through the same thing. But the biggest difference is immediately you're like, okay, here's our plan. Here's the number of calories you have to eat. Here's the protein. I don't care when you eat it. So it could be 10 p.m. to midnight. It could be 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Like just here's your calories and the protein that you have to hit. And immediately there was this like weight, this burden just lifted off my shoulders, being like, oh, finally, someone freaking listens to me. Like someone actually gets what I'm trying to do. And then we kind of hit the ground running. Like you said, immediately some of that excess fat. And again, by no means was I overweight, but it was I was weighing more than I wanted to. That immediately started to drop off. Like you said, we dropped probably close to 15 pounds. We've put that weight back on, but by God, it's so different. If we put those pounds back on in way better places, way less fat. Like I get compliments all the time about like how I look, and I'd always been like a skinny guy, so like people always assumed that weight wise was fine, but just the difference in appearance, moving weight from lower to upper, like it's just night and day. And then like I said, close to 2 years later, here we are, and still grinding and still moving forward.
Yeah, and that's like I remember that conversation where you were like, yeah, like I tried these other coaches and they were like, no, you have to eat 5 meals a day or like you can't lose weight. And I was like, that's dumb. Because it really was like you basically came to me and you were like, hey, this is the lifestyle that I've been living for. I want to say at that point probably 20 years, and really, and you were like, and you said exactly that. You were like, I can change if I have to, but like it's been working for how I live for so long. And it was never the conversation of like, well, it's working for how I want to look and how I want to feel, but it was this is how I've always eaten. Like this just that's my lifestyle. It's, no different than somebody saying to me like, oh, and I've had guys that come through the program that are like, yeah, like my biggest hesitation is the fact that like my wife and I cook dinner together every night. And I can't, like, I don't want to have to start eating chicken, rice, and broccoli and not be able to eat with my wife anymore. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, no worries. It's totally fine. And I feel like it was a very similar conversation when you and I talked, where it was like, okay, cool. Like, that's fine. Like, not my personal preference. I don't love doing intermittent fasting. It has its time and place, but for you, it worked and it worked great. And even now, like, we still see the results. I think, you know, I think the biggest thing that you probably got to a point where you were like, what the fuck is Spencer doing to me when we were going through your reverse? And you were like shoveling 3,000 calories down in like 2 hours before bed. But other than that, I mean, I don't, we never hit a point where you were eating like, you know, rabbit food. Like you were constantly fueled. You were eating a lot of food, even at like our lowest calories. Like you were still eating a good amount of food.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point. I think the lowest calories I ever got to was maybe 18 or 1900 calories a day. And then, like to your point earlier, the most I ever had, I think, was 33 or 3,500 calories. And I won't lie, at some point, you and I had a conversation because I was like, I don't know if I can like physically consume that many calories. And you said, well, you always could start eating during the day if you wanted. And I did, but that wasn't because you were suggesting to not eat because of my intermittent fasting wasn't working. That was more so we were trying to focus on bulking up and getting a little bit more out of the gym. So we wanted to fuel my body with some calories prior to going to the gym. So, I'd grab like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something, which was a little bit earlier than I would have eaten, maybe, started eating maybe an hour or two. But again, that was not you need to change your lifestyle. It was a, hey, we have this goal. Here's a good way to hit it. But by no means was it a draft. Like I said, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich prior, call it an hour or so before the gym. So I was starting eating maybe an hour or two before I normally would have. But outside of that, like, packing in calories, it was fun trying to do the mental math. And I think
Yeah.
another piece that I didn't mention is that I think a couple other coaches immediately wanted to put me on full macros. And for someone who, let's say, has been tracking what they eat for, years or whatever it is, that probably isn't very, very daunting. But for me, when I literally had no idea where to get protein from, where to get fat from, where to get carbs from, like, to me, that was extremely intimidating. And the fact that you and I started with, we're just going to look at calories and protein. We're not going to care about anything else, just calories and protein. To me, that was so much easier of dipping my toe as opposed to kind of being thrown into the deep end and trying to swim. That made it so much easier for when we did eventually transition to full macros, and we've since transitioned off because there's a time and place for everything. But when we did get to that point to transition on, that switch was so much easier for me because I already had a lot of the mental gymnastics down. Whereas if I would have started with full macros from day one, I probably would have dropped the program in a couple of months because I would have been like, I can't do this, or I don't want to do this. It's a lot harder and I don't need to do it. So I think that also was a huge key to the success of the program.
Yeah, and I remember like we had that conversation, or I think you might have even put it in like a check-in. And you were like, if I had done full macros when I started, like I wouldn't be here. Like essentially, like you wouldn't be here on this podcast right now because you wouldn't still be working with me. You'd been like, this is too much. This isn't working. Like, screw this. This is just a lot. And we started out realistically just like kind of very basic. And even now, like you said, like we're back on calories and protein. It works. We're seeing great results. So there's, the proverbial like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Right. Um,
Yeah.
you know, to take it back a little bit though, like going back to, before we started working together, like realistically, like what challenges were you facing? Like you kind of mentioned like, you weren't feeling the most confident, but like what did you find that you were struggling with when it came to that kind of component and that piece of like trying to stay fit, trying to be healthy, trying to keep up with, with your, at the time 3, now 4 kids.
Yeah. I mean, so first off, I was wanting to be healthy, but that's kind of where it stopped. I wasn't trying to be healthy, if that makes sense. So, I said I wanted to be healthy and I wanted to lose weight or whatever you want to call it, but I wasn't doing anything. There were no action items that followed behind that desire. So, easy for me to say, yeah, I want to be healthy. It's nice to say I want to be rich, but if you're not going to work, like, okay, you're not going to be rich. Like, you're not just going to sit there and make money. So, like, same thing here. Like, I wanted to be in good shape. I wanted to be stronger. I wanted to look different, but wasn't doing anything to it. So I think that just actually getting off my ass and starting to do something was probably that first step. But there was like a bunch of just unknowns for me, right? So if we take the nutrition and the gym as two separate pieces, nutrition wise, I didn't know what to do. I never tried to lose weight. I never tried to gain weight. I ate to eat, right? Like something I like to eat, I ordered it. Something I like to eat, I made it. Something, oh, someone's having pizza, I'll have pizza. Someone's eating cake, I'll eat cake. Someone's eating salad, I like salad, I'll have salad. Like there was nothing that was off limits for me, but like the eating was more to serve a purpose of just I'm hungry as opposed to let's focus on what we're eating and making sure what we're putting in our body is helpful. So like that's like a huge step. And I didn't know what to do. So even if I wanted to eat in quotes healthier or, I just, it didn't, it was, I didn't know what to do. And I think I had the same problem in the gym. Like yeah, I want to work out. So okay, so I go to the gym, I take some dumbbells, I start doing some curls, my arms start to hurt, and I'm like, okay, now what? You know, like I just, again, just like we have everything in the gym. We have all the machines, we've got all the weights, we've got all, everything you would want, but like I don't know what to do. And so like even if I would go, okay, so I went for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, a half hour, maybe once or twice a year, literally once or twice a year. And so obviously, and then you don't see results, right? And then you're like pissed off. What do you mean? I went to the gym. Why am I not huge? Right? Like, so I think it was just literally not knowing what to do, that lack of knowledge of, where to go, where to be. I think there's a little piece of it where like I always considered myself to be fit, but like when you start into the fire service, there's different tools you have to carry or different, exercises we practice, and started to see that like there are some other guys that are just either lifting things that I couldn't lift, or carrying things that I couldn't carry, or even endurance wise, like I've done a lot of running prior to you and I kind of teaming up, and marathons and things like that. But as far as like carrying a victim out, like I'm useless if I can't lift more than 100 pounds. Like, what victim is 100 pounds? Right? What am I lifting? A small child? Like, the reality is like you're never carrying that small child that you could throw over your shoulder. You're carrying like the 350-pound person who couldn't get out of their house, right? So me being able to lift 100 pounds, like I'm helping nobody, right? Never mind if I've got to go help a firefighter who fell down. So like that too, like it started to be like, hey, wait a minute, like this is not just I'm not where I need to be or where I want to be. Um, and that sometimes is a pretty frustrating place, right? Uh, again, I wasn't necessarily looking to lose weight per se. That was a byproduct of you and I kind of starting together. But like, I would imagine that's pretty frustrating if someone's trying to lose weight and they just don't know what to do. So same thing here. Like, I wanted to be stronger, but I didn't know what to do. And like I said, it is frustrating. So I think chatting with you and just giving me the basics. And again, day one, I didn't know what to do in the gym. You sent you set up a program for me. We talked through what each day would look like: your push, your pull, your legs, your upper, your lower. If there were any exercises that I didn't know what to do, we chatted through. There's also videos that you provided of, hey, here's what it should look like. I also had the ability to send you videos, and you'd be like, "No, idiot, you're doing it wrong. Like that's why you're not. That's why your arms hurt on leg day because you're doing it wrong. Like you know what I mean? So like there is that aspect of it too. And then I think that like the biggest piece is like raising your hand. Like sometimes it's embarrassing to say I don't know what to do, but you've made it feel, you've created this environment that's like super open, non-judgmental. That's you, and then the other guys in the program as well. But like they've just created this safe space, if you will, which sounds a little silly for a bunch of guys who are in the gym, but a safe space to like either ask questions, be proud of yourself, whatever it is. So yeah, I guess getting back to your original question, like my biggest barrier to entry was like knowledge. But now, like, even with the knowledge, I still like the guidance.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, even me, like you've said it out loud. Like I'm very open the fact that like I have my own coach. Um, and you've even said it in like a group chat is like, guys, like the fact that Spencer has his own coach tells you everything that you need to know. Is like, he's still like, he's coaching all of us. He's getting all of us great results, but he's still paying somebody else to coach him. So like there's that component to it where it's like you don't know what you don't know, and like there's always somebody that can help you out or at least guide you. And some of it, personally for me, and I think probably a little bit for you too, is like I can do it myself, but like I don't really want to spend the time to do it. you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also a part of accountability that helps when there's a third party, if you will. Now, whether that's the guys on the chat who keep me honest, or whether it's you, like the idea that there's someone else watching. Again, the ultimate level, I guess, is having your own motivation, where like you're keeping yourself in check. But there's so many other things that we are doing for ourselves at home, in our relationships, in our families, in our work. Like it's nice to not have to worry about that one piece that someone else is kind of helping me stay accountable. So call it a crutch, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, but like it's also nice to have that accountability to someone else. And I think that that's a big part of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, obviously, like you came in, like we had zero conversation. Like you just randomly like applied on my
Yeah,
Instagram bio. Like you just found like
yeah.
the link and applied. And then I sent you a DM and I was like, "Hey man, got your application. Like let's have a conversation." Um so, given that, like it wasn't like you had been following me. Like you might have probably scrolled through my page and seen like a couple things and been like, oh, this guy looks like he might know what he's talking about. Or you might have looked at it and been like, fucking, I don't know, but there's a link in his bio. I don't know. But at the end of the day, like once we did have that conversation and we were like, okay, yeah, like this makes sense. Let's bring you into the program and get some results. Like, was there anything kind of in that first, I don't know, couple weeks or months maybe that you were like skeptical or nervous that like it just wasn't going to do what you wanted it to do?
Um, I mean, it's interesting. I think I don't know when it hit. Like at some point during the program, and I think it's much more recently where I looked in the mirror. I was like, "Hey, wait, who's that?" You know what I mean? Like body wise, like I could see like a huge transformation in my body. So maybe in the first couple months, there was some skepticism because I was definitely initially eating less than I was normally. And it may not have actually been less calories, but it was because I was focused on what I was eating, right? So like I don't know, let's say on any given night I had 4 sandwiches, just whatever, sandwiches of anything. And now because like we were literally measuring calories and protein, I was only having 3 sandwiches. So it felt like a less. But the reality is I probably didn't need 4 sandwiches. I was probably just bored's the wrong word, but just eating. So in the beginning, it was probably like, huh, like, is this sustainable? And don't get me wrong, when we got up to like the 3,000 plus calories, it went to the flip side, being like, now I'm having 5 sandwiches. Like, is this sustainable? You know what I mean? Um, but so maybe in the beginning it was like like the exercise was definitely I was sore like on day one. You know what I mean? So like the gym, and I may not have seen results, but like just feeling sore, knowing what it's like to work out for a sports team or whatever it is like that. I know things are working. Where like feeling sore post gym, that makes sense. The calories wise was one that I was like, huh, like is this right? Like is this gonna work? Or better said differently, is this sustainable? Because again, I had no idea where we would end up, right? Like, so if let's say we started at 2,000 calories out, I'm just throwing out a number, but like my body was used to eating 2,500 or 20 or 1,700. I don't know what it is, but if my body was eating just a different number, my first thought is this going to be able to continue? Obviously, looking back, it's easy to say it now. Yeah, of course it is 2 years later. But maybe that was it in the beginning. But I think for the most part, like that, there was I'd say minimal skepticism on my side. Like I think because you listened to what I was asking for and said, yeah, we could do that. I think that was a huge piece. Whereas some of the other trainers, I was skeptical because they weren't listening to me. But I think I had this desire to try it out, and I think going into it with an open mind was super helpful too. I recognize this is something that I've never done before, meaning like focusing on food and nutrition, calories, things like that. So that right off the bat is new to me. And prioritizing going to the gym, so finding time in my schedule to go to the gym, that was also new to me, and it was something that I just going into it like committed to myself. Hey, we're gonna try this. We're not gonna half-ass this. We're gonna do what we can. And honestly, like the results happened pretty quickly. Like 2 week two. I mean, for sure 2 months in, but like even I feel like a month in, I was already starting to drop some weight, and it was like all in the right places. And so like that's also super helpful, right? Like, and again, I'm not saying that if I didn't see results, I wouldn't have continued with it, but just to kind of motivate you, like when you see positive results, it like reinforces the actions that have been driving those results.
Yeah, 100%. And that, that's always like the driver, right? And it's with everything. I think that it probably applies, even beyond, the gym and the nutrition. It's like if you went into the office every single day and just grind your face off, and then you don't start to see bonuses or raises or promotions coming, you're like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, why am I here? Right? It's the same thing in your corporate career. Like if you went to work every day and you never saw like potential for growth and like a reason to keep showing up with like more energy and effort every day, like what are you doing? And like I've worked with people that I'm like, why do you come to why do you come to work every day? Like you have zero aspirations to be better. Like why are you here? And I'm sure that you you probably shouldn't
Yeah.
say it out loud, but like you probably have the same thing. Is
No.
like there are people that like you work with, and it's like, like I have career aspirations in my 9 to 5, like in my engineering job. Like I have aspirations. I want to, become a department manager and things like that. And like I'm striving for that. And I go for that every single day. But there are people that I've worked with at, other companies that I'm like, "Ah, you're just okay showing up and just getting a paycheck every week. Like you don't care about anything." And it just baffles me. And I feel like that translates a lot because typically those people are the people that are not the most fit. They're not the happiest. They're just, laissez faire. The life is life. It is what it is. And they don't really have any aspirations anywhere. And it's like, I hate to say it, but it's like, I almost feel bad,
Yeah.
like I almost feel bad for people that
Well,
it's like, if you don't have that, and like for you, like realistically, like, eh, when we started, you were in a much different career position. How
yeah.
much, if at all, do you feel like working together has impacted that? And by all means, like if the answer is like I don't think it did at all, like that's totally fine too. I honestly don't know the answer to this question, but like, realistically, like do you feel like having worked together for the time that we have, like do you feel like that has impacted you in any way, shape, or form in your corporate career?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I think prior to us working together, there was no need for me to really prioritize or set schedules, set boundaries for that matter. Everything was kind of just let things happen as they occur, right? So whether that's work events, family events, friend events, schedule was much more chaotic and honestly a lot less predictable. And, you know, having having items that I was now prioritizing and making sure that I was able to do, right? So getting to the gym, I think it was originally 3 days a week. At one point we were up to 5 days a week. I don't think we ever got to six, but if I'm going to say to myself, hey, I need to make sure I'm at the gym, call it 4 days a week, which has probably been our average, that doesn't just happen, right? Like you can't just not plan ahead. If I'm going to say, hey, I need to get 2,000 calories in and 150 grams of protein, well, that doesn't just happen, right? Like I can't get home and be like, huh, what's in the fridge? So it actually, unintentionally, if you will, helped me kind of set up my week, right? Like my look ahead. My weekends didn't just become relaxing time, whether with friends or family. My weekends became, again, plenty of time to relax with friends and family, but my weekends became my look ahead for the week, whether it was my shopping list, whether it was setting my schedule to see what nights I was going to go to the gym and what nights I was free for other stuff, whether that was recreational stuff, whether that was going out with colleagues, whether that was firefighter training. But it helped me do my look ahead. And so almost unintentionally, an unintentional consequence of wanting to succeed in the program was that it forced me to, now plan out dinners, food, and schedule. So I think that, like I said, almost an unintended consequence is definitely creating this sense of organization in my life that I never had before. And again, I don't know if that was intentional or not. I don't know. Maybe other people can succeed in the program without doing it. I've become this very regimented. And again, I'm not even working out the same nights. Like when you look at my schedule, sometimes it's Monday, sometimes it's Tuesday. Like it moves around, and there's definitely within the program flexibility. It's not like, oh, must be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Like it's not like this set regimented, unflexible schedule. It's quite the contrary. I have the ability to move workouts whenever I want, but if I don't plan on Sunday when I'm going to do my workouts, next thing I know, it's Thursday and I've gone to the gym once. And like that's not helpful, or that's not going to help me succeed. So yeah, so I guess to your point, this creating this less chaotic, more organized life has definitely been a huge plus.
Yeah, and that's like you kind of steered the ship for me, but it's like when you talk, it can sound like, oh my god, like this program is just like a slave driver. Like you gotta show up, you gotta do all this work, you gotta do all this stuff. If you don't track your workouts, you don't track your nutrition, like you're never gonna see success. But like realistically, like dude, you have a lot of shit going on, right? Like you commute into New York City, what, 3-4 days a week, um, for work, and then you're doing your firefighter stuff. You're still You still have two like young kids at home, and then you have two not adult kids, but older kids that we even talked, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago, and you were like, hey, like there's a lot of things coming up with my older kids that 5 days really isn't going to work for me anymore. Okay, cool, let's move to 4. And we did, and we just moved your workouts around. That there is that like piece to it where, to your point, it's like it helps you set up your week, but at the same time there's also that component where it's like, if it's not going to work, and you kind of brought it up a while ago at this point, where you said like all you got to do is raise your hand and just say, hey, I need help, and then we figure it out, like that. Like, I can't do 5 days a week because I know that I can't make it to the gym 5 days because I have all these other things going on in my life between, family and colleagues and work and recreation and all of these things. Like, I can't.
Yeah. I think another piece of it too, kind of going back to your initial piece of um, what was some of my barriers to entry. I think the other piece was just not realizing how much time was needed to dedicate to the gym and to doing the, initially, if I'm thinking like, oh, 90 plus minutes, 4 or 5 days a week, just thinking about what my schedule looked like, I was like, I don't have this. And again, I think at this point we've kind of progressed in terms of reps and sets and resting between sets and whatnot, that it's about an hour in the gym. I think it's actually a little bit less, call it 45 to 55 minutes per workout, but initially it wasn't that. I think we even started, it was much closer to half hour in the gym, each time. And again, lighter weights or whatever it was, and you obviously designed the program and adjusted that. But when we started, being able to see, oh, it's a half hour or, call 40 minutes, that's so doable. Whereas, when I just was daunted in the beginning before we met of thinking, I don't have 90 minutes 5 days a week to get to the gym, or I can't wake up any earlier and I can't go to bed any later. But the reality is that we kind of eased into it, and I think that similar to the not going full macros, I think that having the either less reps or fewer sets or whatever, or even less exercises within a single day, was also super helpful, and slowly but surely easing into the longer workouts. And again, longer, 45 minutes, 55 minutes, that's not long. Like, I you know I know that I've had a time where I've looked down at my phone, looked back up, and I've been on freaking social media for an hour, and that's like a stupid waste of time. So like, if I could find time to scroll through whatever, for 45 minutes, I definitely could find time to not do that and go to the gym for 45 minutes.
Yeah, and I mean, you're basically just like preaching everything that I talk about. Is like, if you can, if you can sit there and scroll friggin' Instagram for an hour at night, it's like you could have gone and done a half an hour workout and gotten ready for bed. Um,
But by the way, you can also scroll through Instagram at the gym in between sets. Like, like if you
yeah,
must scroll through Instagram, you also have
yeah,
time to do that in between
yeah.
sets.
You have at least a minute between every single
Yeah.
set to scroll a little bit. Yeah, which I have a bad habit of doing that because I train first thing in the morning. And I'm like working through, like, I have so many things going on between like my career, my coaching, and then like helping out with like business mentorship as well, that like I have so many plates spinning at all times that like sometimes I'm scrolling through like Facebook and like answering questions for people during my rest periods, which
Yeah.
I try really, like, I'll catch myself doing it where it's like my timer goes off and I'm like still like writing an answer, and then I'm like, okay, I gotta do not disturb. Like, I gotta put this away because I'm gonna sit
Right.
here for 3 minutes answering questions between sets. Um, I think that one question that I always, again, I ask a lot of questions on podcasts that I don't know the answer to. I said this to Adam. I was like, yeah, I'd be a horrible lawyer because I have no idea what the answer is to these questions, and like I could like burn my business to the ground by asking it. But do you ever feel like there was a point, like whether it was a workout or a check in or even just like a group chat or a conversation that we had, where all of a sudden it just like everything just kind of fell into place and you were like, this is awesome. And I like, nothing is going to be able to stop me from getting where I want to be.
No, it never felt like. No, I'm kidding. Of course, yeah. I don't know the point in time. I wish I could look back and be like, oh, this all makes sense. Um, so like, I don't know that there is a point in time. Obviously, now it feels almost glaringly obvious. You know what I mean? Like it's because again, like, even like week to week, month to month, year to year, like the results are speak for themselves. And like almost to the point where now, even if I didn't physically track or weigh my food, I'd still be call it within 100 or 200 calories of where I need to be, which is mind blowing. Just again, concerning where I started. So no, I don't know that there was like a point in time where I was like, yeah, this is definitely working, or this is something that I want to continue. I don't know when that light bulb hit, but it again, like it's on now. Um, Maybe if I give a little thought, I get back to you. I can't think of like there wasn't a moment where it was like, oh shit. Uh, so yeah, no, but again, the light bulb's on. I just don't know when it turned on. I mean, obviously it wasn't day one, right? No one, I'd be shocked if anyone was after one day being like, oh yeah, I'm in. Like, because that's, I would think unrealistic, but yeah, I don't have like that point in time.
Yeah. So now the other side of that question, or I guess the other side of the coin is we dropped 14.9 pounds in the first 10 weeks, and you were a friggin' shredded animal. And then we, like you said, like we reversed, like we damn near doubled your calories over the course of, I want to say it was probably 6-7 months, if not maybe a little bit longer, where I think the lowest we were at was like 1,800 maybe. And we pushed you up to like close over 3,000 calories at one point doing kind of a muscle build phase. Was there a point where the flip side of that, you almost were like, I don't know that this is working anymore, or I don't feel like this is the right path and the right system to still be following?
It's interesting. So I never came to I don't think it never came to the point of where I was like, I don't think Spencer knows what he's doing, or this is wrong. But there was moments of doubt, and I'll tell you. So in the initial phase, and when you and I talked, I never really talked about like wanting to put on muscle, but you and I definitely talked about me wanting to get a little bit less of that spare tire, right? Like I just kind of eliminate some of so lose some weight. Said very plainly. We talked about wanting to lose weight, and to your point that you just made, first 10 weeks dropped, like you said, 15 pounds, and everything was great. And then we started the reverse diet. And, initially my metabolism kind of does what it does. Like I said, been blessed with some good genes and a good metabolism. So we would slowly but surely, call it every week, maybe add 100 calories or something like that. And, you know, hold on one. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, you can do. Sorry. Yeah. It is me. All right, buddy. Let's backtrack. So you want me to start? Let me just start from the beginning, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
This is
Yeah.
raw
Okay.
and uncut, dude. I'm not editing
I.
anything with these episodes.
Oh, really? Oh, shit.
Yeah,
Anyways.
I'm not with you guys. Like and this will be in the podcast too. Is like I just want this to be like a raw like just pure
Okay.
conversation. Like
Sorry. All
I'm
right.
not
Cool, man.
cutting anything. I'm not editing anything because it's just one, I'm lazy. But
Yeah.
two, it's like I like realistically, like this is just for people to get to know you and understand who you are, what you've gone through, and then ultimately, like at the end of the day, like, hey, if you want to work together, like just shoot me a freaking message.
All
So,
right. Cool. So
yeah, to your
anyway, that
point,
was
like, go ahead. Like,
Jackson.
was
He just got back from like an exercise or gym class or whatever it is. So he just wanted to do a game on my phone, and the agreement was if he goes and does exercise for an hour, he can go have some screen time. But anyway, let's go back. So we had dropped 15 pounds first 10 weeks. And then, like I said, we started to add about 100 calories a week, or maybe it was 100 every 2 weeks, whatever the math was. And initially, my body was fine. Like I was staying at that same, I think I was about 135, 137, somewhere in that range. And then slowly but surely, as we started to get maybe past the 2000, maybe past the 2500 calorie mark, I started to put on some weight. And that's when, because again, you and I never really talked about like bulking muscle. We talked about, what the idea of a reverse diet was, and kind of reestablishing my metabolism and kind of waking up some of the metabolism that might have been kind of put to sleep by lowering some calories, so on and so forth. But we never really talked about like, kind of, I'll be honest, I never thought I'd look like I look like now. So when I started to put on weight, and it wasn't, I wasn't seeing like biceps like I feel like I see now, or my chest wasn't. It was just I was putting on weight. It was a number on a scale, whereas opposed to how I look. That started to be like, huh, like, are we losing some of the momentum? And like, honestly, it was every day when I would weigh in, and I do weigh in daily. Every day that I weigh in, I was starting to be like, huh, like, did I, you know what I mean? Like, it was just a question in my head, like, are we going in the right direction? I can't remember if you and I chatted about it. Um, but I had a pure, not that I like the 76ers. I think you do, but like trust the process, right? Like it was a pure, no, you don't. Okay, great. It was a pure like trust the process moment. And I was just trying to do what I could to say, all right, he got me down to 135. He knows what, so like that I think was a huge piece, right? Like I'd already started to buy in because you'd proven commodity, right? You got me down to where I wanted to be. So then it's a matter of, okay, he said what, down to 135, trust the process, and then let's go ahead and just keep going with it. And then, slowly but surely got up to, did I ever get to 160? I don't know if I got to one, maybe I was, 160.
I think you might have got over 160 like 1 or 2 days, but it
Yeah.
was like you straight up were like, I ate more, or
Yeah.
like
Also, it
there
might
was
have been,
something like, it wasn't like you actually were 160. It was like you
right,
had, like, you were basically carrying more water for a day or two
right.
because of, whatever. But
But so anyway, but let's say I was in the high 150s. And like I think you and I started at like 150, 152, 153, something like that. So like I was weighing more than I was like, what? Like to me, that was not alarming. It was just surprising. It was not what I expected. And this was easily maybe not a year ago, but a decent, call it 9+ months ago. And then like when I look back now, I was like, oh, now it all makes sense because then we kind of turned down a little bit, and then like we were pushing hard in the gym. I remember we were going through some like intense PRs where you were telling me like, yeah, like I don't want you to be able to hit the last set, the last rep. You shouldn't be getting to what the range was, and like so we were pushing hard in the gym also, and then like fast forward, we started to cut a little bit, and now it's like, okay. Like once again, Spencer knows what he's talking about, and like again, the results have been, at least for me, great.
this was just the first half of our amazing conversation, raw and uncut, with my client Ari. So if you want to hear the rest of it, just keep listening. The next episode is going to start here in just a minute.